Maybe we should call it Zoom over. Huh? Hi, good morning. Today's message is called Elsie's Tongue. One of my favorite things to do with my time is to read. I love reading. And I read everything from crime thrillers to autobiographies to newspapers to textbooks to online articles to really long Facebook posts to books on every topic under the sun, from philosophy to finance to fossil fuels to food to family planning. I discover new worlds between the covers of books, magazines, and newspapers. Now, the biggest benefit of my insatiable appetite for reading, however, is the wonderful things it does for my vocabulary. Now, the truth is, I wasn't born with a passion for reading, no. For that, I have to thank Elsie and a rather embarrassing incident that happened in primary school. I was 6 years old when I went to class 2, so I was the youngest kid in my class, and I had a huge crush on a girl named Elsie Jeche, who was the tallest girl in the class. So yes, I've been punching above my weight since I was a child. Now, our teacher, Mrs. Akwesi, was very strict. She would give us passages to read, and then she would pick some of us at random to spell tricky words from the passage. Now, Elsie was a shy kid. She didn't talk much, and she kept to herself most of the time. I thought she was amazing though, and a tall, dark angel who could do no wrong in my eyes. Until one day, when Mrs. Akwesi pointed to her at random and asked her to spell the word tongue. Now, Elsie was a smart kid, but I think she was caught completely off guard because instead of spelling tongue, she just stood up and burst into tears. I was in shock. How could my gracious, composed, dignified angel be crying like a baby? It was bad. All I could hear above her sobs was the deep voice of Mrs. Akwesi, who really had a deep voice, bellowing, "That is what happens when you don't read." Now, I don't know what it was about the scene and how it played out, but somehow in my 6-year-old brain, the message I got was that I must never be caught not reading. So I resolved to start and never stop. Now, this incident was Elsie's moment of hardship, not mine, but it still served as a learning moment for me. Now, today it occurs to me that as individuals, we don't often take advantage of the learning value in other people's experiences. Ecclesiastes chapter 1 verse 9 says, "That which has been is that which will be, and that which has been done is that which will be done. So there's nothing new under the sun." This is the Bible's way of telling us to pay attention to the stories of others. The answers to our prayers have often been given to other people, and all we have to do is just pay attention to their ordeals and extract our solutions from their stories. Now, are you going through difficulties in your work, your studies, your business, your family life? Do you think you're the first to have such problems? Do you know that there are other people out there whose experiences and stories could provide you with the key to unlock your own conundrums? Now, as a nation, we have problems, right? Some of them are old, recurring problems for which solutions have evaded us since the birth of our nation. Import dependence, debt, corruption, cholera. We keep looking for new ideas to solve these old problems, but there is nothing new under the sun. Other nations have been through these difficulties and overcome them. Perhaps we need to pay attention to their moments of hardship to extract our learning moments from there. Today, I find myself in a job that requires me to spend hours and hours reading, a job which demands that I express ideas in more than one way with more than one word. God, in His infinite wisdom, gave me what I needed to do this job back when I was 6 years old, long before I even knew I would want a job like this. And He gave it to me through someone else's teachable moment. So naturally, I'm grateful to God and to Elsie Jeche for bursting into tears that day, all because of the word tongue. My name is Kojo Jackson, and as Uncle Ibu White once said, "Only a fool learns exclusively from his own experiences." Need I say more? Good morning, Ghana.
Hello, good morning and welcome to the AM News with me, Mpita CB. Now, in our first story, the opposition National Democratic Congress Tuesday firmed up its decision to go to court over alleged irregularities in the 2020 general elections. The party, through its National Executive Committee, ratified the position of its presidential candidate, John Mahama to challenge the results as announced by the Electoral Commission. The party, among others, says it will be urging the Supreme Court to allow an independent person to collate the votes obtained by the candidates in the elections, as well as audit the electoral materials used. Mr. Mahama obtained 47.36% against President Akufo-Addo's 51.59% in an election international observers have described as free and fair. Manuel Kranting was at the NEC meeting and now reports.
Of the results of the 2020 presidential elections, the NDC has today, through its National Executive Committee, ratified the decision by the flag bearer and some functionaries of the party to reject outrightly the results as declared by the EC. Well, it has been meeting in Accra today at the Nat Hall.
The constituent component of the party, made up of the National Executive Committee, the parliamentary group, today all the 137 plus Tachiman South, which we believe that is still an elected member of parliament, making it 138, were here. The leadership of parliament was here. Our council of elders were here. The functional executive and the national executive committee were all here. And that a resolution has been passed and approved unanimously for the flag bearer to challenge the outcome of the presidential elections. And also in the parliamentary elections where there are disputes, the legal team has been empowered to make sure that they explore all the legal processes to ensure that justice is restored and the will of the people is not subverted.
Just before the declaration of the results, the NDC and its supporters began massing up at the premises of the Electoral Commission, demanding the redeclaration of what they called a stolen verdict. What they have been protesting what they describe as irregularities and anomalies in the numbers as were recorded and so declared by the Electoral Commission on 9th December. Well, the Deputy General Secretary of the party, Peter Boama Otokuno, says that, well, its decision to go to court to seek certain reliefs as regarding the result will not stop it from continuing to mass up on the streets. He says that the massing up that we're seeing and the sort of protests across the country is in demand of justice for the lives which were slain and the lives which were lost during the collation, and in some instances post the collation of the results.
Well, you cannot see the end of the street protest because 8 people have lost their lives. There is a need for us to seek justice for them. So every single avenue that is available, since we are not in the position to file a civil case in respect of murder, we would have to demand that the state take that matter up. And if it takes being on the streets, demonstrating, mass action, mass protest to do that, we are going to do that. If I will not hesitate to take that option at all. We want a conclusive investigation. 3 people have been shot dead. So who shot them? What is the law saying about those who shot the individuals dead? Have they been sent to court? Have we arrested them? That is when you talk about, having resolved the matter. We are demanding justice for the families of those individuals who lost their lives. And every single legal, legitimate avenue that is available for us to demand justice for those individuals that have lost their lives, those martyrs, we would take that avenue.
Well, this decision by the NDC to head to court officially leaves the party with just a little over 24 hours, giving the 21-day window for the challenging of election results in the country. Well, it waits to be seen whether or not indeed, as ratified by the party's National Executive Committee, the case will be filed in the Supreme Court. From here at the Teachers' Hall in Accra, my name is Manuel Kranting for Joy News.
Now, the state has filed a case at the Supreme Court challenging the order of the whole High Court that granted an injunction against the swearing-in of John Peter Amewu as the Member of Parliament for the Hohoe constituency. The state, consequently, wants the decision of the whole High Court squashed and also the court stopped from hearing the substantive case against Mr. Amewu and the Electoral Commission. The state in the suit said the ruling from the court constituted a painted error since it did not have the capacity to hear the matter. The whole High Court, presided over by Justice George Boadu, made the decision after an ex parte application was argued by Chachu Tsikata on December 23, 2020. The legal practitioner insisted that his clients were not given the opportunity to vote in the parliamentary election in the Hohoe constituency. The NDC, which lost the election, argues if the electorate in the communities that were disenfranchised were allowed to vote, their votes could have changed the outcome of the poll. Away from that, Chief Executive of the Telecoms Chamber and former media executive Ken Ashigbe has asked all stakeholders to join the fight against what he describes as the growing impunity against journalists. He also makes the point he is not convinced the state is doing enough to discourage attacks on journalists. Mr. Ashigbe has been reacting to the threats on the life of a number of journalists, including investigative journalist Manasseh Azurawuning, following the outcome of the 2020 election. Speaking on The Pulse on Joy News, he condemns suggestions that journalists sometimes invite these attacks.
I'm not too sure how many politicians have been beaten because they've taken a wrong decision. I'm not too sure how many doctors have been beaten because surgery has gone wrong. I'm not too sure how many lawyers have been attacked because they've lost cases in court. So I've always had this position that when we start discussing the safety of journalists, and then we start hearing the issue of responsibility, it is like justifying the reasons why people should be attacked. And if you look in our situation in Ghana, most of the journalists who have been attacked, you know, from the four of you who have been threatened, from Manasseh, from Efiapokua, tell me how many of these were doing irresponsible journalism. Most of the time, the people who are attacked when they are doing their job. So, if and you find out that those who are doing irresponsible journalism, nobody really touches them. Nobody touches them because they are normally aligned to political. It is politicians who are running media stations, media houses who behave in that, and they are not attacked. It is normally the mainstream media who are attacked. The issues of attack of multimedia, when we call elections, it's not something that happened recently. As far back as when I was, general manager of Joy FM, we experienced that and we've seen that. So you call the elections for one political party, then the other comes to attack you. And that has happened severally. And so it is important that we stop this thing of saying that, responsibility and safety are the same side of court. It's completely wrong.
He charged the relevant state institutions to be up and doing, adding that it is also in the interest of all and sundry to ensure media freedoms are protected.
It is inexplicable that currently, as we speak, Latif's case, the police have not been able to tell us who were involved in that. When you go back and you look again into the literature, the police are also one of the people who are involved in the attack of the media. But they forget that when the situation turns, and the force of the state is against them, it's the media they all run to. Not only should they take them seriously, but even the way they report back to us. If you take the issue of Amewu, yes, we know that some of these investigations can take a while. But you ask yourself, when was the last time that we got any reportage, any update from the police that this is work that they're doing and this is how it's going? It's important that the police and the state apparatus take the attacks on journalists and the media very, very seriously, and then they should be seen of being able to support. But in saying so ourselves, we as journalists as well, we also need to take the defense and the advocacy of ourselves a bit more seriously. Most of the time, we advocate for others. When issues of others come, we follow them. But when it comes to ourselves, we do not. And I think it is important that journalists, for this particular time, we make sure that all the cases that are out there, on a constant basis, we are going back to the police and asking them what is the state of this, so that we can report back to Ghanaians, and then we can also be able to support them. And then also for me, another pain I have, and that's where I dug my heart out for multimedia, is the fact that when these things happen, I've heard that you have written to the police CID reporting about that. But I'm not too sure that I have seen any formal complaint from the Despite group about the challenge involving Efiapokuya. And it's important for all publishers that we need to realize that it is on the sweat and the blood of these journalists that we earn our living.
The Media Foundation for West Africa is also demanding swift investigations into the threats on the lives of some media practitioners. In an interview on Joy Prime, Executive Director of the MFWA, Suleiman Brahim, said the lack of action against persons who threaten journalists for doing their work seems to be breeding impunity.
Well, in this particular instance, it calls for swift investigations, and I know Manasseh has reported the matter to the police, and we can only expect that the police would do a very thorough investigation and bring the perpetrator to book. It's important that we go beyond what is happening to Manasseh, to others who have also raised complaints of intimidation, complaints of threats, and I've learned about Efiapokuya raising a similar concern. I've read about Abdulhai Mumin of GDC also making a similar report. And as I said, I think it provides an opportunity for the police to send a clear signal that people cannot threaten others, people cannot just commit crimes against other people and think that they can go scot-free. So we look forward to the police conducting a very swift investigation into all these acts of threat and bringing the perpetrators to book so that it will send a clear signal to others who may be harboring the same intentions. It is something that we are already working on. As I've said, Manasseh has reported the matter to the police. We'll be following up with the police. In terms of the threats that have been issued, of course, we do have our international partners that we work with, most of whom have capacity to investigate these kinds of, crimes emanating from digital platforms and so on. And we've gotten to a stage where we do have quite some strong collaboration with many of these, big digital platforms, to the extent that anytime we reach out to them, to the extent possible, they are able to support, so long as it's a matter of crime.
Lawyer Martin Pegbu, on his part, says journalists themselves should not stay silent when such attacks happen.
Whatever happens to your neighbor may well affect you. We have other popular saying that when your neighbor's beard is on fire, you find water for yours, right? You could go on and on and on. So let's just make sure that every day we will stand up against these misguided elements. Yes, we know they are bound to come up, but we also are bound to stand up against them. And of course, I want to bring in the constitutional provision here so that we reflect on saying, the point is that you guys as media, you don't have an option, because the Constitution says that you shall uphold the accountability, you see, of the government. It's not an option. It's in Article 162. 162 Clause 5. And I'll read. It says, all agencies of the mass media shall, at all times, be free to uphold the principles, provisions, and objectives of this Constitution, and shall uphold the responsibility and accountability of the government to the people of Ghana. I'm sure you know the normal rule that when you find the word shall, it's imperative. So as long as you operate in the media space, even at the peril of your life, the Constitution says that you shall uphold the responsibility and accountability of the government to the people. And so we would continue to urge you as a media to continue, and we as citizens would also give you all the support that you require. And part of that support is coming into studio here to participate in your programs. And that we've always done.
News with me, Mapita CBD. The show continues with Mama V and Gifty.
And you welcome back. This is still the AM show with me, Gifty Andopia, and Mama V Wuswa Bwaji. Of course, I'm a guest artist here on the show.
I refuse it. Gifty.
And I'll be taking very special wages on the back of that, I promise you.
Okay.
I mean, yesterday we had a bet of 50 cedis Mama V Wuswa Bwaji never paid. And I intend to litigate if possible and to go after that money. Money is hard to come by.
You should take a lawyer. That will help.
Don't worry. I need that money for 31st night service because I want to give a hefty offering. I want to top up.
I'll gladly. I can even top up if you want, once I know what's the purpose.
Okay.
Charlie.
We'll do the collection. So we're going to do the newspaper review. Of course, we don't have any newspapers here, but we'll be getting online to take a look. We'll start from home, like Mama V says, myjoyonline.com. Our top story. NDC officially announces decision to contest 2020 election results. And it comes with a picture of Johnson Asiedu Nketia, General Mosquito, right there for you. I mean, this is something that people have been looking forward to. People actually advise them to do. I think all along people knew that they would go to court if they decided to anyway. So you wonder why they had to do the protest, but it's okay. I mean, protests are legitimate ways of registering your displeasure.
But even if you look at if you look at the statement that they issued yesterday, saying that there's now the blessing of the National Executive Committee, NEC, they also indicate that they're going to use other legitimate means of expressing their displeasure about this. So they're not just going to court, but they would still continue to use other lawful means. And I believe the protests haven't stopped because yesterday when I spoke to George Lowe on the Post, he indicated that he was just coming from a demonstration. And I think he was in the Bota region. Okay. So he indicated that. So yeah, I think the protests are going to continue, but it's pretty much reduced, especially in Accra, I think because of the ban. So that was the top story. It's been actually a running story throughout the week. Other stories there. News about Oppong Nkrumah leaving Information Ministry misconstrued. Okay, misconstrued or untrue, which is which? Well, Pius Hajide, who is the deputy to the minister, is saying that it is misconstrued. I'd like to take a look at that story. Mama V, have you heard anything about that? So that's why I'm kind of like curious, like looking at this, because I haven't. But I'm just thinking again, if he was to be taken away from the Information Ministry,
where else?
Where could he be placed? Now, he's a very effective guy, so he can go to multiple places. But
okay, when you say he's a very effective guy, so by which measurement?
Okay, so he's also very knowledgeable in financial issues, for instance. But I feel, is it like a selfish? I feel like he's very effective and.
So you feel like he fits the ministry, the Information Ministry?
I think also because of the relationship that he has with the media, considering his background. You know, but how we
cross over. You don't want him to cross over.
Oh, he can switch over. See, that's the thing. He can switch over sometimes.
Okay, let's take a little bit a bit of a look at the story. It says Deputy Information Minister Pius Hajide has stated that news about Kojo Oppong Nkrumah stepping down as Information Minister has been misconstrued. I mean, what is the misconstrued that I want to understand? This comes after some news portals reported that Mr. Oppong Nkrumah is resigning from his post as Information Minister. According to the report, the Member of Parliament-elect for Ofuasia Yerbi bade his staff farewell. Oh, really? At a mini deba held at the ministry to mark the end of 2020. Let's take a bit more of the story. Yeah, let's go up a bit. Mr. Oppong Nkrumah is also alleged to have wished the staff well under the new minister who will succeed him. But speaking on Joy FM's Super Morning Show, Mr. Hajide said his boss's speech was misunderstood. So is it the speech, what he said at the staff deba that is being misconstrued, or the report? Because let me see.
Can we still go up?
Yeah. So he says he gave more clarity. He told the staff that the meeting was the last in 2020 and also the last under the first term of a Kufuor-led administration.
Oh.
So here is a quote. Here is a quote. It says, relative to that announcement, I think it's misconstrued reportage. when the minister met with the staff at the normal end of year get together, he informed that this was our last staff deba. Okay, but so what is the
But if there was a line that said, I wish you well under the next minister, was there something like that said?
If Pius doesn't say. Pius
doesn't say.
It just says.
Oh, but so it means that Kojo could be leaving the information.
We don't know. We don't know because even the report says it's been reported by some other media houses. So, but I mean, whichever way, we'll see. How many days we'll know.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Sure.
So let's go back to the other stories on myjoyonline.com.
I should get used to the idea that he could be leaving the information ministry.
Well, you seem to desperately want him to stay at the ministry.
I'm not desperate like that.
Okay, that's the appointing authorities' sole prerogative. So we'll leave it at that.
Yes, ma'am.
So 4 years, 11. That's an interesting story. 4 years, 11 walkouts. The minorities' aggressive record in 7th Parliament. I love the caption of that story.
Except that when you walk out, what do you achieve, really?
You make a statement. You make a statement. I mean, you indicate, and it will be on the records. It will be on the Hansard that you did not agree, assuming a decision was taken.
So just like in the Japa deal, for instance.
Yeah, you can always go back and say, and sometimes, as minority, you always have members who are, it's like a shadow government. Okay, so you can come back to government and then you can take a particular decision on that may be contrary, and you can state your position that we did this.
We disagreed in the first place.
We agreed.
Okay, but listen, that would not be a wise option in the 8th Parliament because they are so close. Because if you did that, then the executive will be happy. Then
you think so?
Yeah, because now you're so close, so you really can make a difference. Okay. You can be more, I guess, effective than just walking out. Okay. We wouldn't need the other side to walk out. That's just what I'm saying in the 8th Parliament.
Okay, we'll see.
Otherwise, Charlie, it will be too easy.
For the government. Well,
I mean, for both sides.
So state challenges High Court's decision to stop Amewu swearing in. That's a story we've done earlier on the news. And culture of silence is gradually creeping back into our democracy. Senor Hosi speaks against attacks on journalists, and that's a fact. I mean, the more people feel threatened, the more cowed they get, and the more they call up in their shells, and even things as harmless as whatever, they find it very difficult to talk about it because they feel, what if someone comes at me? I mean, what's going to happen if I said this? And that's the culture of silence.
The other side, Gifty, is really not even somebody threatening you. I have been personally disappointed, and there are people that I have refused to speak to when they call me. I don't pick up. Or I don't reply their messages because they send me very demeaning messages.
And these are people you know.
And these are people that I personally know, and they personally know me. And, because I work with the multimedia group, and because somehow they feel unhappy about our work, which is really, I also feel disappointed that they're disappointed. Because I ask myself, and I don't want to get into that debate with them. That's why I respectfully refuse to pick their calls. I want to ask them, what did we do wrong?
Oh, but I mean,
you get the thing?
That's to be expected. Yesterday we said here that in 2012, you called the election for NDC. MPP folks were unhappy. They beat up one of our colleagues. I mean, fans, supporters of the party beat up one of our colleagues. So for me, it's to be expected. It's just like you say, disappointing that in the 21st century, that looking at where we have come from and where we are today with all the blah, blah, blah about beacon of democracy, that we're still having this conversation.
Absolutely.
And if an NDC person is having this conversation, it's always easy for them to say, especially under the presidency of someone who's tagged as a human rights advocate. So it's shameful. It's really shameful that we're having this conversation in this time. But we need to talk about it. We need to continue to talk about it so we can.
All right, we have to move on to Graphic Online if they're not giving us the hardcore papers.
And that's where I hand
we can feast. So Akufo-Addo meets cabinets on possible school reopening. That's coming from a tweet shared by Information Minister Kojo Nkrumah. that there's going to be a cabinet meeting today, Wednesday, 30th of December. And as part of the discussion, we're just going to pull out that tweet and share with you that the president is going to consider the possible reopening of schools. So here it is. President Akufo-Addo prepares to meet cabinet tomorrow, which is today, for a final decision on the possible reopening of schools in January. Key on his agenda will be to examine the proposals for assuring the safety of our children should schools reopen. He also did say something to the effect that he's actually been meeting, stakeholders. Okay. So this is just the final one after listening to all the sides. Remember, the schools were closed. That announcement came in March this year. But in October, some schools were reopened. Well, not for everybody. Some of the students had to go back and finish the calendar, the academic calendar. But our children must go back to school.
Did you hear the kids who
They're bored.
Did you hear the kids who spoke to
Agbaba? Yes.
Yeah, at the
Nationalism Park.
Yeah, they want coronavirus to go so that they can go back to school. I mean, I thought it was a done deal, but we'll hear after. I'm sure we'll hear from them after the cabinet meeting. So, Mavi, back to you on the daily.
So hopefully we'll get a dates for reopening
and how
later today. Yeah, exactly. Business Development Minister donates generator to Tamale NMTC, but
I mean, hang on. Business Development Minister is donating a generator to Tamale. It's cool, but isn't it possible for the assembly, the municipal? It's a metropolis actually. So isn't it possible for the Metropolitan Assembly to provide some of these things? Isn't that what the budget's allocated to the metropolis meant for?
Well, I'm thinking that even if they do have the budgets, once the Business Development Minister has done this, they can use that budget to do something else.
Okay.
So, I mean, who knows?
Generator?
Yes. It's a beautiful generator. It's a big set.
Well, well done to the Business Development Minister. I was just thinking, yeah.
Oh, are you thinking again?
No, that's okay.
Sun witness assault, one district, one factory, Chinese investor at Teacher Mante. There's a video. Maybe we can open that. We'll take our time and do that. But I'll tell you about this story of a driver who's been in court for knocking and killing a 5-year-old boy. This was on Christmas Day here in Accra. And the child died later on after he was taken to the Kolebu Teaching Hospital. But he was charged for not being careful, being careless and distracted. He was distracted on the road, apparently.
Mind you, Parliament recently passed the law that provides more sanctions for people who are involved in accident or who are involved in road crashes. So I don't know if that applies in this particular case, because that was more about punishing people for, especially if you had a pregnant woman on board the vehicle. You'll be punished for not just the woman, but for the unborn child.
Oh.
So I don't know if this will be applied.
This will be applicable.
Yes, but certainly they are more, they've expanded the punishment, the sanction range with the new law.
It's an ongoing case, so we'll see how it ends. The driver is on bail, by the way, according to the story.
I mean, I feel sad for him. I'm sure it was, I don't know. Anyway.
So we go to City Newsroom. Gifty?
All right, City Newsroom. Reject NDC's election suit. Ekwedonkor petitions Supreme Court. That's the leading story. NDC heads to Supreme Court to challenge 2020 election results and observe COVID-19 protocols during watch night services, Christian council to churches. And that's part of the conversations that we'll be having here today. And then the state challenges High Court decision to stop Amewu's swearing in. And a lot of people are asking questions about why it has to take the state to defend Mr. Amewu. But I pointed out yesterday also to Judge Lowe that the state, which is Attorney General, was also a respondent on a particular suit. And he said the Attorney General is a nominal respondent. You are the law people. The Attorney General is a nominal respondent and not a principal respondent. So I asked him to explain. But I think people have concerns about why.
We're going to pick up from where you left off on the on Pulse yesterday this morning. So we're certainly raising the issue. And we're also keeping our eye on the Supreme Court, because this is the last day. The Constitution provides for 21 days after declaration of the presidential result if you feel dissatisfied and you want to challenge it. So that last day is today. The NDC has got the blessing of the NEC. But what time exactly would they be at the Supreme Court? We will tell you when it happens.
I had a teacher who used to say, if he asked you to do something and you didn't say, you go see, you go pray. So that pray is see if ever, right?
Action.
Yeah. No, what?
Huh? Pray.
Pray, yes.
Like, yeah, that's it. I think
so you don't even understand.
I think you're speaking Ga. But how would I know that you're trying to...
You go see, you go pray. And you're saying it's Ga. You go pray. I bet you go pray. Like you.
I bet you go pray.
Okay. Then the Executive Committee of NDC approves legal challenge of December 7 elections, which is what Mamavi was referring to. So this is City Newsroom. Where next do we go to?
We go to the BBC.
BBC. Over to you, Mamavi.
Oh, not like in teapots. SA restaurants warn. So alcohol sales have been banned in South Africa to prevent reckless behavior amid a COVID spike. I think we started this again yesterday because there are new restrictions because their cases are just going up. They've set a new record in Africa. And one of the reasons, of course, they don't want people drinking is because they don't want them occupying the beds in the hospital. They want to make way for people who really suffer from COVID-19 to be treated.
But people who also need a bit of alcohol in their system will suffer.
Come to Ghana. We have plenty.
No, they should stay there. We're managing our COVID-19 cases here. But I really hope that they'll be able to deal with the issue then. 1 million is a lot of COVID-19 cases too.
You know, Nigeria is also suffering from that new variant. They're also seriously looking into it, and they are recording a lot more cases, I think, in Kaduna, Lagos, and Abuja.
That's scary when it gets to Nigeria.
But we have to go, Gifty.
To Ghana. All right.
Time is up.
No problem.
We have to talk about sports. Our colleague, Gary Al-Smith, brings us all that you've missed from yesterday, particularly in the English Premier League. Is it going to take a break because they're also recording more COVID-19 cases? He's coming up right after this.
Good morning and welcome to the Sports on the AM show. I'm Gary Al-Smith. And we begin with the news that the president of the Ghana Football Association, Kedu Kraku, has promised to deliver interesting products to the football community going forward. Despite the challenge in 2020, next year presents, he believes, the football governing body with an opportunity to grow interest in the FA's activities.
If you are not a football fan in Ghana, it means you don't belong to Ghana. To our football fans across the 10 regions and beyond, we know that you were very expectant. We know that you love your football and you have been supporting your football since the resumption of our Premier League. We know you're also expectant for the Division 1 League, the Women's Premier League, and the regional leagues. We are so grateful for sticking with the domestic sport. You are the 12th man, and you ensure that we are strong as a football nation. We promise that in the new year, we'll deliver even more interesting football products for you to consume. We thank you for the support and continue to love Ghana football.
The outcome of the 2019 GFA presidential elections, if you recall, divided the football family, and that's according to the former Vice President, George Afriyie. He spoke to Muftar Nabila Abdullahi, and Muftar has filed this report.
The 2019 GFA presidential election saw the top three candidates, Kurt Okreku, George Afriyie, and Nanayo Amponsa, secure 44, 40, and 27 votes respectively. Former Vice President of the Ghana Football Association, George Afriyie, who conceded defeat after a second round of delegates casting their ballots, said the outcome of the elections showed that the football family was divided.
If you look at what happened in that election, it showed clearly that our football was divided. The results of the 2019 GFA election shows that the first round was clear. So personally, if I was in the shoes of the president, I will try to bring everybody on board. Just to have a united front to execute the agenda of bring back the love.
Mr. Efriye is calling on the GFA president to bring everyone on board if he wants to succeed as head of the football governing body in the country.
Kets had 44, I had 40, and I had 27. It was clear. Fred Papo had 7. It was clear. There are still people who believe in Ket. There are some people who believe in Nanaya. There are some people who believe in George. There are some people who believe in... It's clear. It shows that no clear one person had the total majority of the people. It was clear. You saw it.
But must someone have the total majority of the people?
If someone has that total majority, it shows the total confidence of the whole football family behind you. You don't know that? That is how come Mr. Kwesi Nyantakyi was able to rule almost 3 times. Because he had everybody supporting him. See, sometimes when we say these things, it is even good for Ket. Because when you bring everybody on board, then it gets to a point where nobody even wants to contest you. You are there.
Ket Okreku was voted GFA president after 3 rounds of voting, which saw him succeed Kwesi Nyantakyi as president of the Ghana Football Association.
Former Middlesbrough and Aston Villa, current Aston Villa under-23 coach George Boateng has been in the news as he's had exclusive interviews with Joy Sports, and he's not hidden his desire now to coach the Black Stars in the near future. You might recall that he's been linked with the job a couple of times in different capacities, but this is the first time he's coming out explicitly to state his intentions in that regard.
Even though he was born in Ghana, George Boateng represented the Netherlands at international level, earning 4 caps in total, after spells at 9 clubs including Feyenoord and Middlesbrough, and making 499 appearances. The 45-year-old caught time on his career in 2013, but he did not move too far away from the sport he loves so much. He ventured into coaching in 2014. He began at Malaysian club Kelantan FA. These days, he's the head coach of the under-23 team of his former club Aston Villa. George Boateng is eager to give everything for the Birmingham-based club, but his long-term dream is to coach the Black Stars.
If the Black Stars need me, I will always be available. I've always said that, and I would always help. I have a very good relationship with the GFA, with Mr. Okraku and the Vice President, Mr. Mark Addo. They are doing a great job now. And I've always indicated that if they need my services, I'm always able to talk. And if we can then come together and put our heads together and achieve and agree on something, that's perfect. But yeah, there will definitely be an interest to one day to manage Black Stars.
George Boateng is happy with the work of current Black Stars coach CK Akono.
CK is doing it. Let him do it. Let him give him the time that he needs to develop and to put a good team together. I'm not after his job at all. I think I'm now in a very good position where I'm enjoying my coaching. I love Aston Villa. I love what I'm. It's a great club. We are back in the Premier League.
He may not have represented Ghana at international level, but his desire to coach the Black Stars in the not too distant future is still burning.
Thanks for staying with us here on the AM show. It's a Wednesday. Today is the 30th of December. We will not see this day in 2020 ever again. So make the best out of today. Don't say I told you and don't miss it. Now, the Attorney General has asked the Supreme Court to quash a decision by the whole High Court to put an injunction on the gazetting of Member of Parliament elect for Hohoi, John Peter Amewu. That story is still very hot. There are various angles to it. Just so we don't confuse you, we want to break the issues down. And then also, what's the latest with the NDC? It's the very last day, the 21-day elapses today. Will they indeed be in court today? Our court correspondent joins us in studio to help us break all the issues down. Joseph Akable is here. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Mama V, and
yeah.
Good morning to Gifty.
Why are you saying Gifty and looking at Mama V?
Okay, so good morning to you, Mama V, and good morning to
That's
Gifty
right.
as well.
That's right. You're welcome.
When two politicians meet.
Seriously?
She's the politician, I'm not.
For where? It's good to have you. It's good to have you, Joseph.
Yeah. So just this issue with the AG, explain to us and to our viewers, and let's try and see if we can answer the question why it is the AG that's handling this issue when the person concerned is John Peter Amewu.
Okay, and so the Attorney General was sued together with Peter Amewu and the Electoral Commission by the individuals who filed that particular matter. And the argument they are making is that prior to the creation of the new regions, they were part, those traditional areas, Santrofi, Lolobi, Akpafu, and Likpe, were part of the Hohoi constituency. And so they voted in the Hohoi constituency. And so they make the point that because of the EC not creating a constituency for them and taking them out of the Hohoi constituency, they could not vote for a parliamentary candidate, and that their rights have been breached. And so they asked that the court places an injunction on the gazetting of Peter Amewu, who won the Hohoi elections eventually, on the gazetting on his declaration as the winner of that particular elections. And so the AG is a defendant in this particular matter, and the AG has decided to exercise the right to take the matter up to the Supreme Court. And the point the AG makes is, in June 2020, there was a Supreme Court decision. Some individuals had filed a case to make the point that those traditional areas, the SAL traditional areas, they could not vote in the Hohoi constituency. The reason being that the constitutional requirement is that a constituency cannot fall within 2 districts, neither can it fall in 2 regions.
Sure.
And so the Supreme Court held that they cannot vote in that particular area. Those traditional areas are not part of the Hohoi constituency. And so what should have been done is that the EC should have then created a constituency for them. The EC said it put the instrument in court, and the requirement, the arrangement is such that you can't just create one. And so it's a realignment. It will just realign all of them again. And so it's an instrument that will recognize all constituencies again and will bring one more.
But you see, right, please go ahead.
So they put that instrument in at the parliament. They put it before parliament. It couldn't mature before parliament rules, and so that was not done. And so obviously it was not the fault of the people who were taken out of voting in Hohoi that the constituency was not created. It wasn't their fault. And so their argument is that, look, we should have voted for an MP, decided that you've created new regions, and the result was that we couldn't vote in this particular area. But what happens to us now? Our rights have been breached, so because of that, don't allow it to proceed. But the Attorney General's argument, which he has put before the Supreme Court, is that when the court decides to grant an injunction, and we need to point out that the injunction that the court granted was ex parte, the AG, Mr. Amewu's lawyers, and the Electoral Commission were not present in court. The law allows that in the exceptional circumstances, you can go without going on notice to file such an application. The AG's argument is that the basic thing that the court should have asked is that, do these individuals have a right that must be protected? And the AG's argument is that, yes, they have a right, but they do not have voting rights in Hohoi constituency. They have a right because as it stands, the Supreme Court says you can't vote in Hohoi. So it is law. You should be voting in a constituency that has been created for you.
But that
has not been done. That has not been done. So the AG's argument is that you have no right in the Hohoi elections, which you are now trying to impede the declaration. The Hohoi people who are supposed to vote, the law recognizes them. They have voted for someone to win. You were part of them previously. The law now says you can't vote there anymore because we've created new regions. So their argument is that, the AG's argument is that the court ought not to have granted that particular remedy because they do not have voting rights in the Hohoi constituency, which they are now impeding.
Okay, so help me understand this. How do you juxtapose the fact that these people who have gone to court are being told you don't have voting rights in this particular constituency, but then the AG seem to have a case against the court's jurisdiction?
Yes.
So is it an issue of jurisdiction on the side of those who are seeking the redress, or on the side of the judge?
And so the argument he's making is that because there is no right to be protected, there was no case properly so filed in the court to have enabled the court to have heard it. Ideally, the point he's making is that they should have either gone to the High Court to make the case that our rights...
The Electoral Commission did not make it possible. They prevented us from voting.
And also decide who represents us in Parliament. And so those rights have been breached. And so the AG's point is that it is not in doubt that you cannot vote in Hohoi. So how can you say that your rights have been breached in an area that you cannot vote in, and so you are going to disturb their right that they've exercised? it should go against the Electoral Commission and the state actors who failed to ensure that your constituency was created to enable you vote there.
So I see that, I mean, apart from the long write-up and the procedures, the basic thing, I guess, for any person to understand is sue Electoral Commission, sue the states for disenfranchising you, for disallowing you from taking part in the parliamentary elections, but not the action
action that you've taken against the Hohoi constituency and the people. But I mean, the argument that they or their lawyers also made, led by Chachu Chikata, they made before the court was that, I mean, look, these are people who were part of the Hohoi constituency. They were voting here, and you decided to take them out. And once you didn't provide that for them, you have denied them that right. And they think that that action is also appropriate. And so all these are matters that have been put before the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court will be deciding
it's very interesting.
But the backstory to the whole politicking that people from the area have explained is that Professor Margaret Kweku, who lost the election, hails from those traditional areas and is quite strong in those areas. And so their argument too is to the effect from the back politics is that could the election results have been different if those areas had voted? That's the question that...
No, but I think the fundamental thing here is that people have been disenfranchised. I think that's pretty fundamental, because if you created new regions and for that matter altered the constituency so that a group of people cannot vote, then there had to have been a provision. I mean, maybe send the voters register that in which you registered them to a close-by constituency.
And it's not just about they've been disenfranchised; they've been denied representation for the next 4 years.
Yes, I mean those two are sort of intertwined. Yes, so you deny me the opportunity to vote, and now I have no representation in Parliament. So what am I?
Exactly.
I mean, I'm sure the EC. So the EC has a lot to answer.
I think the culprit here, really, with the discussion that we're having, is the Electoral Commission. What's their position?
Their argument,
apart from that argument that I put a regulation and then it didn't mature. It's not the people's business.
Yeah. Because we know the processes that when you send things to Parliament, you go through. So it should have all been factored.
And you should have considered
and
that.
Especially when, as far back, in fact, the Supreme Court judgment, the June one, made the point that they should take steps in June 2020. Said take steps to ensure that you realign the constituencies to make provision for those you've taken from the Hohoi constituency now. And so from June, obviously the 21 days could have been possible if the steps had been taken on time all the way till December. And even now, as we count down, whether it's possible or not, only time will tell, but it should be done before.
Professor Kweku, your friend, has been making some very interesting arguments, and he seemed to suggest that could be possible before we swear in the 8th Parliament. Explain his argument.
He's been saying that since 9th January, since 9th December, that right after the declaration, if the EC was, in fact, he said it on the day before the election when the EC issued that statement that those areas will not be voting. And his argument was that when Parliament resumed after the election, they could have followed through with that process in time, because his point is, if there had been a runoff, the runoff would have taken place around 27th December. The runoff would have been done and would have had a swearing in on 7th. And so he says there is a window that an election could have taken place if they were minded to go through with the legislative process to have the realignment done. The election could have still been done before January 7th, because in simple terms, the people have been denied the right of voting and representation, and he doesn't think that's argues well. And he's been arguing forcefully that, something needs to be done about it.
And to think the Commission wanted to take a break.
I mean, like,
when there was this important, outstanding
these issues to deal with. I mean, let me just push this in before we even get to the leave bit. The fact that typically the Attorney General should be representing the EC as well. No,
the EC as an independent institution, they have their own lawyers.
Lawyers. So will they be? The Attorney General represents government,
the states,
right? The state. Is the EC in this context considered as a completely autonomous entity that has nothing to do with the state, and is that why the AG cannot represent them?
So it's because of their independence as an institution, and so they have the right to get their own councils and have represented. Because of the role that they play.
So the EC can choose to let the AG
Yes, but ideally, and what they do in terms of exerting their independence is to have their own council. Because the danger you could have is, because their work is mainly election related, you could have a situation where,
government interference.
Like what is going to happen with the election petition now. I mean, the defendants will be Nana Akufo-Addo and the Electoral Commission. Those are the two defendants. And so you can imagine if
you have the AG representing both.
I mean, and so it doesn't really help. It will be that interest clash in there. So they have their own.
So we haven't had a response from one of the defendants, which is the EC.
EC, yes.
Wow.
Which I think is sad, because I think the Electoral Commission, even though this is playing out in the courts, and I guess that's where we come in as media. Some people may probably not have understood the issues properly, and so just be following the court issue in terms of the interim injunction and this action that's been taken by the AG now. But the main issue, I guess, for us as a people is the fact that some of our people were not allowed to vote. It wasn't their fault, and it was the fault of the Electoral Commission.
So there had to be a provision for them.
Yeah.
And that's why they are in court. But now the AG is saying that you've gone to the wrong court.
Yes, and so the Supreme Court should exercise its supervisory jurisdiction to set that action aside. And so, I mean, the substantive question that remains is what steps, because the ministry, the Attorney General is also a ministry responsible for justice. And so,
so I was just going to say that.
What is being done
the Attorney General Ministry of Justice fighting against its own people? That's controversial.
They will tell you it's controversial. They are defendants. They are fighting for the rights of those who have also elected their MPs, and they deserve their MPs.
Listen, you're watching and following the issues. Kindly send us your thoughts, particularly if you're in these areas. Gifty would share what you sent to us.
Yeah, the number is 0540109009. That's 0540109009. I mean, some of you have been sending some messages. Let me just take this one. This one says, if things should continue this way, like this, then the people of SAL do not have a representative in parliament. Then what it means to us is that they should take their destiny into their hands and never recognize anybody as president. Well, you can't do that either. Yeah. They should avoid paying tax. That's illegal. you'll be arrested. How can we live in a country with lawlessness? Well, the way you deal with lawlessness isn't being lawless yourself. Okay, so you can't take the law in your hands and be lawless because you feel someone has been lawless. There are processes that you can go through. You only make the situation worse. I had a question that has just escaped me. But then, what it means is that these people in the next 4 years won't be represented. But do we have any precedents to this effect where some sort of provision can be made for them to vote?
It's impossible, because the problem is that, so the Constitution, what it's tried to do was they want to create a situation where a government will, within the life of a parliament, create constituency for various reasons, especially when parliament is very close. So you have 137, 137, one independent, and you want to now get some upper hand, and you decide to realign and create some additional constituencies from your stronghold. Then elections are held, and you
that would be a terrible precedent.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so it has to be done before the dissolution, so that it takes effect.
Absolutely.
So that's the what it was trying to prevent, and unfortunately, we find ourselves in this situation. So it means that if by midnight of January 6th, that is not carried out, then it will be a real challenge.
But we shouldn't be faced with this. We've come a long way.
Today's December.
But I'm just saying that even as a democracy, we've come a very long way, 25 years, to be faced with this, and this is a hurdle now. Like, it shouldn't be. Like, we should have known, and we should have corrected it.
Yeah.
So,
mind you, our Electoral Commission has been invited, has been cited as one of the best in the region. Yeah. And sometimes we've been invited to go and supervise other people's elections. So the point Mama V is saying that we've matured enough to not to not make these mistakes. But Joseph, if the court says that the Supreme Court, well, if the AG argues that you have no jurisdiction, the whole court has no jurisdiction to sit over this matter, does it give the people, I mean, what options are available for
the options would be they could go to the High Court to seeking enforcement that, I mean, look, we are residents here, we had the voting rights. As a result of creation of the regions, we're told that we cannot vote here, but provision was not made for us, and that amounts to a breach of our rights. I mean, once they make that point, and ask for various remedies, the court should be able to give some directions as to what should happen. And so, I mean, if the Supreme Court is minded to agree with the position of the AG, then there should be some steps that they should be able to take at the High Court. If that does not happen, and they rather say that, look, the High Court can actually go ahead to hear the matter, then obviously the litigation at that level also goes on. But if the injunction is removed, then it means that John Peter Amewu will be sworn in as...
Joseph, let's also talk about the abridgment of time, because as this issue has been discussed, we forget that the date set was in January, but the AG wants it to come forward. Explain that bit.
And so the January date is because when you file an issue, and this one they are going on notice, and so you need to give the defendant a 14-day window for the person to enter an appearance and respond. And so the abridgment of time is a separate application that you are simply asking the court that, look, this is an extraordinary circumstance, it's a matter that we must hear immediately.
It's got implications on the composition of the next parliament.
Yes, and more importantly, serious implications for the election of a Speaker of Parliament, which once is carried out, if you want to undo it, you need 2/3 of Parliament. And already if it is 137, if the injunction is enforced and you cannot, Mr. Amewu is not sworn in and he cannot vote, it means that it becomes what? 136, 137, and
one independent.
So you get 137,
yeah,
and one not voting. And so it's an exceptional circumstance. You are making a point that, okay, because of that, the court will hear the matter earlier than usual. What I've been trying to find out is the date for the abridgment. That is what I'm not...
That's today, sure. Wednesday, 30th.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that's today. That application for abridgment of time
there are times in the past that abridgment of time, when granted, the court then hears the matter. Because you can ask that, okay, it's supposed to be 12 January, but because of the exceptional circumstances, grant the abridgment for us to hear the case right now.
So that will be heard today, and it will be interesting, you know, where, because this is the second working day after the holiday. And then after tomorrow, because the next day is also a holiday, and then we get into the... So it's interesting how things are playing out. Let's hear some comments, Gifty.
Yeah, so this one says, the EC is very incompetent. Mistakes are flying all over. And what happened in Hohoi too is not fair. But let's leave it to the court. FK send that message from Kumasi. This one says, the people of Lolobi, Akpafu, Likbe, et al. Have been disenfranchised. Yes, but the election of Peter Amewu is sacrosanct as far as Hohoi constituents have decided. The Electoral Commission should face the court. The swearing in is imminent. From Sir Stone in Kumasi. I don't know if you guys have a comment on the back of that. It sounds
like we have many coaches like when the black stars are playing. We have a lot of lawyers when there are legal issues.
The argument the person makes, right?
Yeah.
You want me to read it again?
It's similar. It just sounds like what the AG is saying.
The
whole is done. The whole is done. Yes, you have concerns, but the whole is done.
It's a done deal.
It's a done deal.
He says it's the election of Peter Amewu is sacrosanct as far as the Hohoi constituents have decided. The Electoral Commission should face the court. So he's saying that the Electoral Commission should go and answer these questions at the court, and to answer the questions to the satisfaction of the people of Likpe, etc. But as for the swearing in there, that's what this person said.
Yo, Yate.
Okay.
Say judge.
I'm sure he was at the jams that Amewu was dancing.
Hey, I heard Shatawale bagged like 2 million or something.
Oh, really?
That's what the
bloggers are saying.
They are alleging. They are alleging. That's what alleging.
That's some good money, man.
But we can investigate.
That's some good money. Oh,
but 2 million.
You investigate.
Anyway,
you won't get anywhere with it.
So this message says, will the defendants be Nanado inclusive? I thought the two parties are just the EC and one petitioner likely to be John Dramani Mahama. Assertion made from the election manual. Teddy.
No, okay, so let's
sense this one.
So let's correct that. So it's the person who claims that they either won the election or they should have been declared the winners, right? Or there was something wrong with it in this case, which if he goes to court, which will be John Mahama. But also the person who was validly declared winner. And then the Electoral Commission. So 3 parties. They are not, unlike the previous one, they won't have NDC as a party join, or NPP as a party join, or any other person as a citizen who says, I have interest in the case.
Once you file, we stick to what you filed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this will all be done in 42 days.
That's what the court says. We'll see. I knew from day one. One may think, this one says, I knew this from day one. One may think that the ruling party connived with EC to do this. Why? Because just after the voter registration, then the ostracization of the South District from the constituency followed by the directive that no votes transfer. This is unfair. Is this accurate, Joseph?
Well, the decision came before the voter registration exercise. It was in June 2020. So the decision of the Supreme Court came before the voter registration exercise. In fact, that particular matter, even before June, had been pending in the courts for a while before it came up. Right after the creation of the new regions, that issue came up strongly. It actually came up during the NDC's primaries, actually, because some of the delegates even raised concerns that those who were from those other areas who were within the party could not even participate in. So that's what led eventually to what happened at the Supreme Court, and that decision came out.
Conspiracy theory.
So Nelson from Amewu has a very interesting perspective. He says, interesting discussion. I now understand why Peter Amewu won the Hohoe seat. Certainly, he says, certainly, the South area has been disenfranchised. The EC will never solve this because any attempt to solve this gives the NDC a majority in parliament. Clearly, the Hohoe seat was never won. It was stolen. Okay, he says, mark my words, if this is not solved immediately, we will see a okay, you see that you are saying that it will be replicated after 2024. If you don't cry now, don't ever cry anytime thereafter. Nelson from Atebubu. I don't think it will
we hear you.
Be repeated. I mean, that it will be replicated in 2024. Okay, Electoral Commission has not paid we the temporary office. I'll read the message. It's from Samuel in Kumasi. Samuel says, Electoral Commission has not paid we the temporary officials who conducted the exhibition in general elections. Samuel, I'm sorry about that, but we get a number of some of these messages, people asking for their monies to be paid by the Electoral Commission.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They should pay them.
Yes, ma'am.
Shall we call it a wrap?
Yes.
I still have a lot of messages, but yeah.
Okay, one more.
Okay, let me take this one that just came in. Mama V and friends, our EC and the government are dead goats. The Hohoe seats should be done again. Right, from Pando. Well, we don't think that's going to happen. It doesn't look like that's going to happen. It's in courts now, so. Or it's, yeah.
Okay, so Joseph is a man who keeps his ears on the ground on this abridgment of time, and then also the NDC, which is likely to file today. Otherwise, then they won't be going to court.
Yeah, they will not have a course of action.
So Joseph,
but they voted in the presidential election, right?
Yes, they voted in the presidential election.
Someone is asking. They voted.
Oh yeah, they did. They voted.
So they were not given ballot papers for parliamentary elections.
Only
they were just given
elections.
Yeah. So Joseph will be keeping us up to date. Before we wrap up at night, if anything comes up, trust that Joseph would hint us and we'll bring that to you. Thank you all for your messages. We're going to be talking about something that will happen across our country tomorrow. Would you be switching over, crossing over,
zooming over?
Zooming, yeah.
I'll be walking slowly over.
We'll zoom over. He'll be walking
moving slowly, monitoring.
Why? Which part of that don't you understand?
It means that he'll be at the beach or something like that.
The beaches, that would be illegal.
No, it won't be illegal.
The beaches are.
They are closed there.
Yeah.
Yes.
I saw a post that
in your dreams.
Someone was, after the last address, someone was asking that where did he think we celebrated his election as president?
And some people are asking. They say they're saying that the president said we shouldn't go to the beach. Does he have an Instagram account?
Yes, actually, a lot of stuff.
Because people are putting a lot of pictures of themselves on the beach.
Oh my God!
But seriously, coronavirus is still.
Yes,
it is.
Yes.
Okay, so when we come back, we will be talking about the watch night services, but one of the biggest events, obviously, is the crossover by the ICGC. So we will talk about how they are doing it this year. Is there an Independence Square? That's all coming up right after this. All right, thanks for staying with us here on the AM show. We're going to be talking about what will be happening across the country in terms of the watch night services and how it would happen. Of course, COVID is still around. We're still in the COVID era. So particularly with the crossover, what's the plan for it this year, for instance? My guest in studio is Reverend Albert Okran. He's with the ICGC. We'll be joined a bit later on, and then we'll have other guests also join us on this conversation. But good morning to you. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mavi. Good to see you. And Afishapa.
Afin Committee. I think that you are, I don't know if you had the foresight because you've got a virtual university, so I guess COVID-19 didn't affect that.
I guess it affected every one of us, but God has been good to us this year, and we thank God for his goodness.
How heavy was the impact on your private business?
I think that as a pastor in the International Central Gospel Church, it's been heartwarming to just observe at close range how quickly the church responded to the needs of people. And I doff my hat to Pastor Table for the foresight and the leadership that he provided. Very quick response and the sheer capacity to provide solutions to people, because this year has been a very, very challenging year for people. And I must say that it's been very fulfilling to see how many lives have been touched and helped this year. And for me, that is the highlight of my year, seeing people helped in the way that they have been helped.
The church is not still doing, in terms of the main church, you're still not doing members coming in service, right?
We are having in-person services, but with very strict protocols. And it's also been, the opportunity has been provided for people to worship from home. And so people worship from home, virtually, live on air, on TV, thanks to multimedia and other partners for providing the channels for ministry to be extended. And I must say that beyond our regular membership, we've had the opportunity this year in particular to serve people from all across the world by the power of technology with the gospel of Christ. And so that has been another very fulfilling thing to notice.
It's not the same though. But how has it changed? Because obviously when it first started, we're all trying to figure out how this could work. How is the closeness now, even though it's virtual?
In yesterday's interview on Time with Pastor Otabil, he made a very significant statement that at a time like this, he's felt closer to the congregation than in every other year. And he described it like a mother whose child is sick. And that empathy that you feel, trying to cook their favorite meals, trying to stay close to them, monitoring their temperature. I must say that beyond what you see on air, so much more goes on behind the scenes to ensure that the congregation is fine. And it started with providing food supplies for people, reaching out to people even though we're socially distanced, providing avenues for people who come through the church and pick up food supplies, staying close to widows, staying close to bereaved people. It's been a very demanding year. He described this year as the year he's worked hardest. And I can relate to it because it's meant doing more than you typically will do. And really, church is about people, it's about lives, it's about impact. And so there is what you may want to call in economics the macro, and then there's the micro.
Okay.
I think that there's been a redefinition of what ministry is and what the needs of people are. And we've had to relearn how to meet the needs of people. And so in that regard, I believe that while in-person meetings may have reduced, the impact of ministry has been even greater. And it's evidenced by the number of new interventions provided, Where to Go, Time with Pastor Otabil, and other ones that you may not even see in the big media space, but which are very, very timely and needful for the congregation.
I don't know if you've measured it yet, though, but have you gained a lot more membership, or are there a lot more people listening and watching?
Mavi, I can tell you by a wide mile that if we used response in terms of consistent response on social media, people reaching out and so on, it will be evident that the opportunity that COVID has provided has extended the boundaries of ministry more than any single thing in living memory. Because there are people who insist, they may not have seen pastor before, but they insist that they are members of our church and they are in countries that he may not have even personally visited before. And it's very humbling because they don't just say that, but they take it very, very seriously. And I think that in the same way that business will say that we found out that people could participate of your products and services in a way they've never done before in the past, we also have come to the realization that people can fully express and participate in your ministry without seeing you physically. And for us, that is something we are very grateful for at the International Central Gospel Church.
Let me introduce into the conversation Most Reverend Dr. Paul K. Boafo, Presiding Bishop, Methodist Church Ghana, also Chairman of the Christian Council. He joins us via Zoom. A very good morning to you, sir. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning. Good morning. And thank you very much for this opportunity.
Oh, good to see you. We should have been in church today having this conversation.
Right, right.
Okay, so I have in the studio here Reverend Albert Okran. Let me just start off maybe by asking you a few things in terms of how far we have come with COVID and church services. Last time you took me to one of your branches, this was just after we had eased the restrictions a bit. And you're showing me around in terms of how, service is organized. But how far have we come? Are you still combining with the virtual?
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, we are still combining with the virtual. We have some in person coming in and others join us via Zoom and other social platforms. So, and that is what we are doing all this while. And we have also told members as well as other congregations within the Christian Council to be doing same because of the restrictions with COVID.
Is there a general directive with the crossover midnight services that will be happening tomorrow?
Yes, we will call it watch night. Okay. We'll call it watch night.
Oh, so Methodist, is it Methodist calls it watch nights?
That's right.
Okay,
yes,
great.
That has been the traditional name that we all knew, and it has been with us. The watch night service, we know it has its own flair and what comes with, because people want to come in and say goodbye to the year that is passing and to be received into the new year with God. And so churches are full to capacity. And knowing COVID and the restrictions that are in place, we are saying that all protocols must be observed. For the hand washing, taking of temperatures, writing names, and then the sanitizing and all that, and then the social distancing in the chapels. All these things must be taken into account. So those who come in into the auditorium, and then there are those who sit outside, all observing this. And apart from that, we have also asked that those who can add the virtual to what will be happening in person, they should go through it so that we don't get people crowded in the auditoriums. Apart from that, we are saying that if we could have shorter services so that when it hits 12 o'clock and we have entered the new year, mostly people would have stayed longer, dancing, praising God and all that, going through all kinds of other things. We are saying that can we have about 10, 15 minutes so that the place is empty and people can go home and continue with their reflections. We should not stay longer. We are also saying that the dancing, the waving of handkerchiefs and the jumping and sometimes the fanfare that comes along with it, all these things must be minimized in view of the restrictions that are in place because of COVID.
Okay, great. Reverend Albert Okran, let me take you back to 2019. I guess as a member of ICGC, I know that you plan way ahead. So what was the dream for the 2020 crossover?
Well, the history of our events has always been that every Greater Works, every crossover will be much bigger than the one before. And especially in a year that Pastor Table has declared a year of excellence, it was expected that this year's crossover will be a very huge event, and rightly so, looking at the history. So we started a year of excellence, knowing that we would end it with a big crossover, and the plan was always in place. But we've had to adapt, like everything else that we've done, very, very quickly. And right from the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, Dr. Tabo was very insistent that the safety of people must be paramount. And so very early when there was agitation about churches not meeting physically, he took a strong stand that the church should not meet. And many were surprised, but it was justified by later developments. And so he's been very clear that in all these decisions, the welfare of people must be paramount. And he has insisted that super spreader events mustn't be held. And so in that regard, this year's crossover is what he calls virtually virtual. That means that probably 98% of the people will be virtual. Looking at the numbers, I mean, typically for an average crossover event, you're looking at a full stadium over the years or a full Independence Square. And Mavi, just think about this year. Think about what people have been through, what people have experienced, loss of loved ones, loss of jobs, miracles that they've seen that they can testify about. Any attempt at holding a full crossover event would have been uncontrollable because people would have poured in their numbers, and in the end, it would have defeated the purpose because people wouldn't have been safe. And so in that regard, what is called virtually virtual is that there will be a few people at the Christ Temple compound. How many people can the auditorium take with all the distancing and all that? So people are being encouraged to join us on Joy News TV, on all our other channels that they've been on throughout the year for our church services. Any channel that you were on, just stay there. You will find us there. There's no need to move. And also, very importantly, to be with their families. It's not an individual event. It's a family time. You're encouraging families to be together and enter the new year together. It's a seminal, it's a very critical time, the turn of 1 year into a new year. So families must come together, come before the Lord, and just cross over together. And next year has been declared a year of fruitfulness. We are trusting God that it will be a fruitful time for individuals, a fruitful time for families, and a fruitful time for businesses. So let's start it right by just entering in the house of the Lord.
So virtual.
Virtually virtual.
Virtually virtual.
Yes.
Just stay where you are. Keep watching as you've been watching.
Yes.
Just a few people allowed in the auditorium.
Yes. And not just join. I think that it's important to mention that, wow.
This is typical crossover, Reverend Okran.
Just looking at the picture alone brings some nostalgia because it was just something. I mean, Mama V, it's a special experience to just be in that audience. Very orderly, very intense spiritual atmosphere. And just watching it, I just feel the sense of what we go through every year at the Independence Square for the crossover service. And it has become the tradition for people. They travel from far and near just to be with God. So what you're saying is that God will be in your home as you come together. So get your communion elements ready. Get your anointing oil ready. Get ready to sing hymns. Get ready for a time of prayer. Get ready for the new year, the high point of crossover after the intercession, the prayer, the singing, the worship. It's at 11 o'clock when Pastor Table takes over for that 1.5 hour consecrated period of the New Year message, the declaration for the next year, the communion service, the anointing service, and it's all a basket of spiritual blessing. And we encourage people to be together with their families for that part of the experience. And this year we've added one very special feature that I want to mention.
Okay.
Most people love hymns, and hymns bring you to that place of being personally so grateful to God for all that you've personally experienced. And so ahead of the start of crossover, we have a pre-crossover where we have just various choirs of ICGC across the country, the King's Temple Choir, the Trinity Temple Choir, the Holy Ghost Temple Choir, and the Calvary Temple Choir, and then the Endless Praise from Christ Temple, just singing hymns with all of us. And that's a pre-crossover, 1 hour of just singing hymns, and then just praying, personally just thanking God for what he has done. I know you would love that. Do you love hymns?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that will be for 1 hour before the crossover, and then at 10 o'clock the service starts, and then it goes on till 12:30.
Okay, great. Let me find out from Reverend Dr. Paul Boafo, and this is in terms of the Methodist Church. What is the exact plan for the watch night service?
Right. Our plan is the same as we would have for previous years. We will start with the thanksgiving to God, thanking him for the passing year and what we have experienced and the many blessings that is giving unto us. Then it's a time of confession where we look at ourselves, do a self-reflection of our spirituality, how we have related with God, how we have related with others, and at the same time, how we have been good citizens of the nation, at workplace, in our families, as students, as children. Everyone is given the opportunity to do an introspection, because as we know, the unexamined life is not worth living, and the year ending is the appropriate time for us to do these reflections. Then it is also a time to hear the word of God. We have some preachers prepared who would come in with the assurances of God, ushering us into a new year of new beginnings, a year in which we are all looking forward to the good of it and making sure that we have God's hand upon us, God's light leading us, and God as our guide into the new year. So these are the assurances that are given from Scripture. And it's not somebody just trying to come up with his own ideas, but what is God telling us from Scripture that gives us the assurance that, look, I am with you. And it is coupled with hymn singing, the praises, and then when it's getting to 12 midnight, that is when we enter into an intense prayer for every individual who comes to church. And this is happening throughout the connection. Well, when we say the connect, throughout the country, and the leader or the minister will lead the people to encounter God and to ask for God's blessings, God's mercies, God's hand in everything that will be there in the new year. And then you say that the lights go off and the prayers are intensified. People are asking God, please walk with us, help us, and see us through and take us from the end of the year into a new year. And for us, the Methodists, when we hit 12 midnight, we chant what we call the Te Deum Laudamus. We praise thee, O God. We acknowledge thee to be the Lord. And in that canticle, which is Canticle 2, it's full of praises to God for his mercies upon our lives. And then we also acknowledge the sovereignty of our Lord upon us. And then the tail end of the canticle is the request that we make, that as we have brought us into the new year, these are the things that we would want God you do according to your will in our lives in the new year. And it's also a time where we bring people into that relationship. For us, we would wait till the first Sunday, then we bring people together into a covenant service. We don't add covenant service to watch night, but the watch night is separate, where you encounter God, you tally with God, and you move into a new year. Then the Sunday, you come out in your numbers with the family, everyone. Then we come to covenant with God. And there are certain things that we say which bind us together. And once it is bound here on earth, we believe that it is also bound in heaven. And that's how we live. So it's going to be full of praises, thanksgiving, time of confession, times of adoration. Then we intercede. Then we come to the climax where we prepare to enter the new year with the hope that God is giving us from His word.
You know, we had great expectations entering the year 2020. And I'm just putting this to you, Reverend Dr. Paul Kamnabuafo, also to you, Reverend Albert Okran, with me in the studio. There were great expectations. I mean, we didn't see COVID-19 happening in this year. It's been very difficult for some people. Some people have lost jobs. Some people have lost many things. They've lost lives as well. So what is the, I don't know if it's assurances that I'm asking for, but where should we be leaning for hope or for a brighter 2021? I mean, how do we know that it's going to be different?
Yeah, you are perfectly right, because COVID exposed our vulnerabilities. It exposed the inequalities in society and leading to loss of jobs. People were out, and then there was, in fact, some, as they were laid out from jobs, meant that there was no food on the table for the family, and the churches sometimes had to come in to help. And it is not only that, some loss of lives as a result of COVID, breadwinners were taken away. A whole lot can be said about COVID. But in the midst of all these, we believe that God is alive. And once we prayed to Him, and He has answered our prayers and bringing us into a new beginning, we are going to trust Him still, that He is the God who is still the guide. We cannot take Him out of our lives as men and women of faith. He is still our God, because for the Methodist people, will sing one hymn and says that through all the changing scenes of life. And when we talk of changing scenes of life, we are talking about the ups and the downs of life. The world might be changing. Things around us might be changing for the worse. But again, we sing in another hymn that He who changes not, the God we serve changes not. He is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And we will not go away from Him, but we'll trust Him that He who has brought us this far, He would hold us still and take us there and take us through the year. We didn't have any idea about what was going to happen in 2020 with regards to COVID. But when it happened, we cried unto Him. And so as we come to the portal of a new year, we so say that, Lord, You have brought us to the edges or the banks of another Red Sea. Is that year going to consume us? But we know that when You brought the Israelites to the Red Sea, and Pharaoh and his people were coming, You parted the sea and You saw the Israelites through. It's the same God that we serve. And that is why we need to trust Him still, because He is our God.
All right, Most Reverend Dr. Paul Kamnabuafo, I thank you very much for your time this morning and helping us understand from the Christian Council's perspective, and also the direction for the Methodist Church. I wish you well with the Watch Night service tonight. No, tomorrow. And a Happy New Year.
Thank you, and Happy New Year too. May the year bring us with all the blessings and with all the peace and the joy that you have wished for. The Lord bless you. Right.
Amen. Thank you so much. Reverend Okan, so I guess the same question. How do we know that 2021 is going to be better?
I think that as believers, our strength is in the Word of God, the infallible Word of God. And when the psalmist says, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. There's an assurance that you're walking through. You will not die in the valley. You will walk through and you will come out. Isaiah 43 verse 2 says, when you pass through the waters, I will be with you. And through the rivers, they shall not overflow you. When you walk through the fire, you shall not be burned, nor shall the flames scorch you. The reason why we need to gather in a crossover service is to reassure ourselves from the basis of God's word that we may have lost something, but there is so much to thank God for. Again, I learned this from the interaction with Pastor Table this week, that on time with Pastor Table, that when you sit down and begin to count what God has done for you, you may end up redefining your perspective about 2020. So whereas you may have started with the general notion that it's been a tough year, it's been a difficult year, and you may have reason to say that, just contemplating on the fact that you are alive, that you have not lost it all, that you are able to rebuild your life, will put in your heart a sense of gratitude to God that, you know what, yes, I may not have had everything I want, and I may even have lost some of what I have, but I have life, I have health, I have peace. And there is somebody whose only prayer to God is to have what I have. How can I not say thank you to God? And so it's important that we put our thoughts in perspective that in spite of it all, God has been good. And some would even go to the extent of saying that in the face of that, this year, 2020, may even be the best year of their lives so far. And that is the kind of perspective that Scripture brings when we allow God to speak to our hearts concerning a situation you are going through. You just begin to see so many things you can thank God for, and then suddenly the outlook changes from the one-sided perspective to a holistic appreciation of the goodness and the faithfulness of God.
Hallelujah.
Amen.
I realized that myself, actually. And I was saying to myself yesterday that, you know, when you, because usually you have one big thing that you're expecting. So say you want a job change, and that's the biggest plan or the biggest expectation. But that didn't happen, obviously, because of the times that we're in. But there are other many successes, other things that has happened to you. And I was just using the fact that you may have graduated from school.
Absolutely.
Some started and didn't graduate, but that's an achievement. That's a big success.
Amen.
So if you begin to reflect on the little things that has happened to you, you begin to realize that you've been blessed a lot. Just the one thing that you were expecting didn't happen. But maybe it wasn't even God's perfect timing.
That's the beautiful thing about what you just said. Two things I'll pick from what you just said. One is reflect. I think that this season is a season for introspection. There are times when it's loud, but there are times when each one must spend time with God and with themselves. Just evaluating, just having perspective. And it's a very fulfilling experience to just spend time by yourself, just thinking of how far you've come on the journey. And I guess it will provide a lot of strength at a time like this. And the second point you mentioned was the fact that there's the timing of God. The God that we serve is able to do in one day what we humans think will take 10 years to accomplish. And so as long as you are alive and you are in the center of God's plan, whatever you think you would have loved to see done this year will happen at the right place, at the right time. And when it does happen, it will be in God's way and much more beautiful than anything you could have done with your own strength.
I think one other thing I learned also yesterday, I probably learned a few things yesterday, is that you may be in a hurry, but God is not in a hurry.
God is never too late.
God is not in a hurry, even though you may be in a hurry. Yeah. So, year of fruitfulness 2021.
Fruitfulness, yes.
That's the theme for ICGC. On the lighter note, though, how does Dr. Otabel, what does he think about the crossover that he invented that, almost everybody has adopted now?
I'll ask you when I see. One thing I can guess. One thing I can guess is that I think that from observing him, I've realized that because of the grace upon his life, whatever God gives him is owned not just by himself, but by several people across the world. So you will find that even the theme for the year that he has declared, many nations, many people across the world will make that their theme. And for somebody who sees himself as somebody that God has sent to be a blessing to humanity, I believe it will be a source of joy for him that anything that God gives him, the devotional that he does, is used across the world. Where to Go is now being used across the world, about to start on Joy FM from this week. That's just the part of him that I get fascinated by, how much impact and how much reach God has graced him with. And so I think that just seeing people adopting crossover will give him a sense of fulfillment and joy.
They even write it the same way, some people.
That part is another conversation.
To pay like patents or something.
That one
taking a token for all
that one is intellectual property.
Okay, so how about the other branches, the ICGC branches? What's the direction?
So our churches would all follow the same pattern. Most of them will have limited in-person meetings, and then also they would join the online stream. For many of them, they do a pipe in at 11 o'clock just to get the direction of the year, because nobody wants to miss what Pastor Table will say. So sometimes you find that they hold their own services, and at 11 they cross over to join us.
Okay.
And some have TVs installed in church. It's not just for this year. It's been something they've done over the years. They have televisions in church. They have monitors in church. And they cross over at 11 o'clock all the way through midnight to Pastor Table. Some also have a fully drawn-up program. But as long as they maintain the protocols and have it in the way that we prescribe, consecrated time coming before the Lord, I'm sure that they will be blessed in that regard.
So the virtual crossover will start from exactly what time?
So the crossover service is from 10 p.m. till 12:30 a.m. But the special bonus I mentioned is the pre-crossover service on all our social media platforms from 9 p.m. till 10 p.m. But the crossover service starts from 10 p.m. till 12:30 a.m.
Okay. Somebody's watching us, has heard virtual, but still wants to be in church. What's the direction? Can they still come?
Yes.
But if you come and it's full, then...
We are very committed to maintaining and observing the COVID-19 protocols. And we are mindful that the kind of audience that crossover attracts can never be hosted at the church premises. So we'll encourage people to watch and participate from home. They can even create their own socially distanced neighborhoods and put up a giant TV and watch from there. And it's fine. They can gather in clusters and participate. And they will sense and feel the presence of God. I think that this is a very unusual year. And so we'll encourage people to observe it as such. But hey, the presence of God is the presence of God. If you want to come, nobody will turn you away. But we believe that many more people should stay at home and join the service.
All right. So we will catch up virtual. That's what I'm doing with my family tomorrow, God willing, with the crossover session. But thank you so much. I guess after we've crossed over successfully into 2021, we can also have a conversation as to how we should be planning our lives, really. A lot has happened. January, and we're told that the president is going to make a decision on the date for the resumption of schools. So families will be planning. We'll be paying school fees and it will be good to have a conversation. So I'll come back to you in 2021, God willing.
Let me say a big thank you on behalf of Dr. Amewu for, not just to you, but Team Multimedia for supporting us in such a phenomenal way. This has been a very demanding year for ministry, and you've been there for us, and we want to say a big thank you to all the team. Let me greet Kusichum and Kenan Sa and of course Elvis for leading the effort in this regard. We are grateful, and God bless you.
We thank you for sharing with our platform as well.
Amen.
All right. Okay, so stay with us. One thing we're doing is we're roving, and Manuel Kranting is on that beat, and he's coming to us live from the University of Ghana, Legon. He's talking about the attacks on journalists.
Also, Mamabi, or you'd know that there have been a number of threats and, in fact, some physical attacks that have been visited upon, some journalists in the country as regarding their roles, especially in the coverage of the 2020 elections. Well, this phenomenon is not new. In fact, in the past year, we saw the gruesome murder of investigative journalist with Tiger IPI Ahmed Swale, who was gunned down in his vehicle. We've also seen some journalists being assaulted, being beaten. Lately, we've seen Manasseh Azuriawene, after he wrote an article, come forth to say that he's been receiving fresh death threats. And even some of our colleagues at the multimedia group have been receiving similar threats. So, I mean, what implications does this phenomenon have on the sort of stories that journalists tell? And indeed, what are the responsibilities that members of the public have in beating down this issue to the barest minimum, so that yourself, myself, and everyone else who's watching us, can have the very best of the content that we channel. So I'm here at the University of Ghana. This is David, there's Julius. To my far right is Ampong, and then my far left is Divine. All of these are past students of the University of Ghana, and they have some really interesting, views about the issues that are happening. Let me start off with Julius. Grateful that you could speak to us. Well, you've seen these. Are you surprised that, with a democracy like ours, we still have issues like this?
Yeah, I'm highly surprised, Manuel, and to think of the fact that these things are happening in 2020 rather surprises me the more. If these things were happening earlier and now things are toning down, then we'd say we are progressing. But it's sad to note that the more the year advances, then we are retrogressing in very key factors of our democracy, especially on journalism. You mentioned Ahmed Swale. He was threatened by a state official, an elected member of parliament for Asin Central, on live television. Days or weeks after, he's gone. And up till now, we've not heard anything. There has been no investigation whatsoever. I don't know if there was. And because the public was not told whether or not...
Well, we know that there's investigation, except it hasn't been closed yet.
Exactly. And it's taken too long. Someone is dead, shot, after he was threatened. And he even mentioned, deal with him and I will pay. So I don't know why up till now no one is being held responsible for that. And I think it's so sad. Recently, I think, what's the name of GTV? Abdul Haimumen was also threatened by other thugs. And I feel it's very worrying, very, very worrying. And on the side of the state, I think we are failing to protect our journalists. Before 2016, when investigative journalist Awuni Manasseh made a piece on John Mahama, I think on Ford Expedition, when anger was brewing among members of the John Mahama administration, the Interior Minister then called on him and asked him if he felt safe. If he doesn't, the state will provide him security. That is the extent to which journalists were protected in the years back. So I think going forward, now that we are even progressing, it is 2020, 4 or 5 years after that story, we don't have a similar situation.
Well, interesting that you make that point. I mean, are we able to provide, security for every single journalist? I'll come back to you. But David, he makes an interesting point that we seem to be retrogressing in terms of our democratic, ideals and press freedom. For him, the state has a very important role to play. What says you?
Well, thank you very much, Mano. I can't even agree less with what he's saying. The state, together with all the individual institutions that are present in the country, have serious role to play in ensuring media freedom. Now, I would like, just for the purposes of letting the audience who are watching us understand the extent of this issue and why it is important that we need to take a very critical step in protecting the media, because their role, I mean, as regarded by the Constitution, they are the fourth arm of the government, and you have political parties who come into power and they pursue interests of their party and not necessarily the interests of the masses or the citizens of the country. So the role that the media has to play is to be a referee in the center and ensure that the activities that the political parties or the government plays is in the interest of the people. Now, when you look at the article or the constitutional provision that gives the right to the media, clearly being stated. Now, I want to read portions of that part. Now, Article 162 of the 1990 Constitution, that is the provision that gives the media the freedom and then the independence to actually, carry out their responsibilities. Now, that clause, 162 of the 1992 Constitution, it explicitly, I repeat, it explicitly says that freedom and independence of the media are hereby guaranteed. Now, the question I want to ask is that, is it guaranteed just on paper, or is a guarantee that is supposed to be ensured by institutions in the country? Now, that's a question that we need to ask ourselves as citizens, ask ourselves as media personnel, ask ourselves as political parties. Now, I give you scenarios of both political parties. This general elections, 2020 elections, both general main parties in the country, and some of the incidences that have been recorded. And then you ask yourself whether indeed these people who want to lead us even have an idea of the Constitution that guides the country.
And as you're going into the examples, I'm getting a picture from you that it isn't really a matter of a certain a particular political party, maybe party A or party B. It's generally a character that we find, on every one of them. Is that correct?
Definitely. Like I actually want to talk about. They've recorded in the incidences by the Media Freedom for Media Foundation for West Africa. They have been able to put together data on several incidences that has been carried out by both political parties, and it is very sad to have this happening in this period.
Let me go to Ampon. Ampon, talk to me. He makes the point of a sort of characteristic feature of specifically political parties who are not in agreement with the sort of reporting and so on that journalists, put out there. But there is a critical role that the public itself has in making sure that Article 162 of the 1992 Constitution, which guarantees press freedom, is actually seen in the work of journalists. For instance, the UNESCO Accra Declaration says that the public, also a major stakeholder in the matter, needs to speak up when things are not going. Are we speaking up enough?
Thank you, Mano. For me, I think that the general public as an entity itself has also joined in the whole fight against press freedom, because we have a situation in Ghana where journalists put out stories and people tend to identify those journalists with the political parties those stories sometimes tend to favor. I think it is an affront to the fight against press freedom, because as a general public, without the journalists, we remain in the dark. We remain uninformed of things that actually go on in government. And so if the journalist has been able to muster the courage to put out a story on something that he thinks is wrong and must be corrected, you don't come out as general public to rather insult the journalist and puts the journalists in a very tight corner, because I think that these are the things that give these unscrupulous individuals the opportunity to also do whatever they want to do. So as a general public, we must actually embrace the work of journalists and continue to encourage them to do what they can do for the country.
And Ampong hits the nail right on the head, and I think I would want to agree with you. So that, I mean, the work that journalists are doing is for and on behalf of the public. So that if journalists do something and then the public now turns around, the public on whose behalf the work is being done turns around to attack journalists. I mean, you almost like leave them in a space where, you know, people are not even appreciating. Let us stop it anyways. Divine, speak to me about how, and thank you very much, Ampon. That's really interesting. Speak to me about how that, you know, reality of the public, for instance, as Ampon is saying, sometimes, you know, now being rather the folks who are attacking the journalists, how that impacts on the work of the journalists. You think that they are emboldened enough to, you know, still continue doing the stories that they are doing?
Definitely not. Definitely not. Because the media has always been considered as antagonists of political elites. And so the only popular support that the media has always gotten since time immemorial is the support of the public. And so if you now have a situation where the public, which the media would traditionally rely on their support, is now against, you know, media persons in the country, then there's a cause for worry. Definitely if I'm a media person and the same public on whose behalf I am risking my life and getting peanuts for, you know, is against me, then I ask myself, what really am I doing this for? Because it looks like the people that I'm even doing this for do not understand why we are doing this for them. And I think it is a symptom of the increasing political polarization in the country. All across the world, you see that politics is increasingly polarizing populations. And so if you go to the world's greatest democracy, for instance, in the US, in the past 4 years, there has been a very high rate of political polarization. And funny enough, in these past 4 years, there has been an increasing rate of attacks on the media. And so that is one major cause of attacks, because both political parties feel like the media are aligned to one party or the other. And if you have a country where political participation is very high, like what we have in Ghana, in the just ended elections, we had almost 80% turnout. And so if you have 80% of the country being, you know, polarized on political lines, if a journalist comes out with something that is, you know, purported to favor the other party, then they are going as that person. But it is the responsibility of the political parties themselves to educate their people. And so if you have political leaders attacking the media, definitely the followers are going to attack the media. Because I think apart from religion in this country, one, you know, set of people that are listened to by their followers is political parties, political party leaders. And so it is up to the political party leaders to make it a point not to be attacking, you know, the media.
And that's a point that Divine makes, that the political parties themselves must now take it up to educate their followers, so that sometimes, you know, the leaders themselves may not be the ones, you know, inciting the public to do that. But, you know, some party fanatics and so on, who may be too passionate about the issues, will now go after the journalists. Now, the politicians should call their supporters to order. That's, you know, essentially a sense of the conversation that we're having. We're going to hand over back to you in studio and continue the conversation. It's really interesting. But from here at the University of Ghana, Mavi, this Manuel, handing back to you.
All right, thank you, Manuel, and the guys from the University of Ghana, Legon, young people also making their voices heard on this very important issue of journalists being attacked in various ways, some being issued with death threats and so on and so forth. Gifty, it's good that young people are also talking about
Certainly, that's what I was going to say. It's good that they understand the issues, and it's good that we hear their voices, because these are the people that, first of all, the politicians will be targeting. Again, these are the people that we believe the very near future, you know, will depend on. So I'm excited that they know the stories, they know what's going on, and they're actually following it, and they have an opinion which they're sharing.
All right, stay with us. Mapito Sibidi comes up next with Show Business News.